She didn't scream the word. That's what stayed with me. It wasn't some outburst fueled by emotion. It was delivered cold, like a weather report. "You're just a leech," Sienna said, her voice flat, almost practiced. Then she tossed my bag, my old duffel from the days when I used to take Derek to swim meets, onto the tile floor. It landed with a soft thud, barely enough to echo. "Leave. Now." I didn't say anything. I didn't ask where this was coming from, or what I had done to deserve it. I just picked up the bag, which still had my initials stitched into the side, and walked toward the door. The house was quiet. Derek stood frozen at the kitchen counter, eyes locked on the floor, not a word from him, not even a flinch. That night followed me home, though, at that point. I wasn't sure where home was anymore. 2 months earlier, I had moved in to help them. At least that's what we all told ourselves. After my husband passed, the house felt hollow. I'd kept it going for another year, but it was too much. The lawn, the roof repairs, the emptiness. Derek said there was room at theirs. Sienna smiled politely and mentioned the guest room. "Just until you find your feet again," she'd said. I thought I already had. Their daughter, Ava, had just turned 4. She loved puzzles and hated broccoli. I picked her up from daycare on Mondays, Thursdays, and every other Friday. I cooked most meals. Sometimes froze extra portions. I paid the gas bill once without telling them because the notice looked urgent. I didn't want them to feel burdened. I also fixed their Wi-Fi router, which kept kicking everyone off Zoom during Derek's meetings. I set up their online banking security, installed updates on their devices, scanned for malware. One night, I caught a phishing email that nearly cost them $3,000. I flagged it before they even saw it, but I never said much. That's how I was raised. You help where you can and keep your name off the mess. I was good at that, being invisible and essential at the same time. Still, I noticed the shift. At first, it was small things. The way Sienna would close the kitchen cabinets a little harder when I was in the room. How Derek stopped saying thank you when I brought in groceries. One day I came home from the store and my picture on the hallway shelf was gone. Nothing said aloud, just removed. The night she called me a leech, we were eating dinner. Roasted chicken, string beans, mashed potatoes. I reached for the cracked blue dish, the one I had brought from my own house, and she slapped my hand away. Gently, but firm. Not that one. She said, "It's decorative." And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't part of the arrangement. I was furniture with a heartbeat. What makes someone family? What they give, or how quietly they give it. The first time I walked into the guest room, Sienna was already talking about repainting it after I left. Maybe a soft gray, she mused, trailing her fingers along the windowsill. Something gender neutral, just in case we have another baby. I nodded, pretending not to notice the mildew creeping down from the ceiling corner or the sag in the left side of the mattress. A week later, I paid out of pocket to have the roof leak patched and bought a new foam topper for the bed. She never mentioned it again. Derek helped me carry in 2 boxes books, paperwork, a kettle I liked to use. He kept one AirPod in the whole time, nodding along to whatever was playing. "Just drop it there," I said when we got to the room. He paused long enough to ask if I needed anything else, and when I said no, he left without a word. That became the rhythm. Polite silence. Functional distance. He and Sienna had their routines. Unspoken rules about the house that I learned to tiptoe around. No cooking after 9. Don't leave mugs in the sink. The thermostat stayed at 68. I adapted. I always have. But some days, the air inside that room felt as tight as the lid on a jar no one had opened in years. 3 times a week, I picked Ava up from daycare. She ran into my arms, wild curls bouncing, fingers sticky from whatever snack they'd handed out that day. We read books, sang songs. I taught her how to fold socks into tiny balls and how to recognize a lowercase g. Sienna often came home mid-call, hand raised as if to say, "Don't interrupt." She would glance at us, then head upstairs without a word. Groceries were another quiet offering. I noticed what they were running low on: milk, rice, cleaning spray, and restocked during my own errands. I never kept receipts, never asked to be paid back. Once, I overheard Sienna say to Derek, "I swear we're going through food faster these days." He mumbled something about increased usage. Derek didn't look at me the same way anymore. When we did speak, it was in fragments. He talked about API errors and authentication flows, like I was another screen he had to troubleshoot. I wanted to ask him how he was. I wanted him to ask me the same. But the space between us was wide and padded with things we never said, most nights. After dishes were washed and Ava had gone to sleep, I retreated to the guest room and opened my laptop. I reset their passwords, activated two-factor authentication for Derek's freelance account, updated Sienna's cloud storage so she wouldn't lose the client files she never backed up. I did it quietly, efficiently, like an operating system running in the background, invisible until something breaks. If I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone even notice what no longer worked Sunday used to be the one day we sat down together? When Derek was a boy, we'd make pancakes and argue over crossword puzzles. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like a ritual, something ours, now. It was just another obligation. Sienna called it family dinner, said it was important for Ava to see adults sitting down to a meal. But lately, the table felt more like a conference room with assigned seats and quiet evaluations. That night, she made baked chicken with rosemary. The moment I saw the pan come out of the oven, my stomach tightened. I'd told her about the allergy the first week I moved in. She nodded then, said she'd remember. Apparently, she hadn't. I didn't say a word. Just shifted the potatoes around on my plate while Ava crumbled bread into her milk. Derek sat across from me, half scrolling through something on his phone until Sienna shot him a look. He put it down, cleared his throat, and asked Ava about her puzzle. She giggled, then spilled her milk, and I jumped up without thinking, grabbing paper towels, wiping the table, taking her plate to the sink. When I returned, Sienna was dabbing at her napkin, calm and sharp. "It's not just groceries," she said, voice light. "The utility bills have gone up, too. Heating, streaming subscriptions. Ava's been needing more clothes." I sat back down. "I've been meaning to say," she continued, still looking at her plate, "we might need to discuss rent." Derek didn't look up. I nodded, slowly. "I've got a small consulting invoice coming through. Should clear by next week. I can send something then." She let out a soft laugh, not amused, just final. "We're not talking about someday, Marlene. We're talking now." "I can't give what I don't have," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I've never." And then it came. So casual. It took me a moment to realize what had been said. "You're just a leech living off us." The silence didn't fall. It settled thick and quiet, like dust in still air. My fork was still in my hand. Derek said nothing, not a word. Just sat there like he wasn't even in the room. Sienna stood up, disappeared down the hallway. When she returned, she had my duffel bag in her hand. The same one I'd carried through airports to visit them when Ava was born. She dropped it on the hardwood floor beside my chair. "You should go. Tonight." I stared at the bag. The zipper was half open, like even it wasn't sure it belonged here anymore. Ava looked up at me from her booster seat, mouth sticky with jam. Unaware that the room had turned, I picked up my water glass. took a sip, then stood. No one followed me down the hall. No one asked if I needed help packing. Was that the moment I became a guest in my own son's house? Or had I always been one I didn't cry? Not when the door closed behind me. Not when I heard the soft clink of dishes being cleared inside like it was any other night. I walked to my car with my duffel over one shoulder and my laptop case in the other hand. The driveway lights flicked on automatically, like they were lighting the way for someone else. Vera lived 10 minutes away. She opened the door before I knocked and stepped aside without a word. Her spare room smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs, and the mattress creaked when I sat on it. I didn't mind. It was a relief to be somewhere that didn't expect anything from me. We didn't talk much the first night. She made tea, slid it across the table, and let me sit in silence. The next morning, she left a clean towel on the bathroom door and a handwritten Wi-Fi password on the counter. That was Vera. Gentle presence. No performance. I opened my laptop on her kitchen table and began sorting through the freelance backlog I'd been putting off. A website update for a food truck. Some branding edits for a yoga studio. A grant application template a nonprofit had asked me to design months ago. I moved from one thing to the next without music, without noise, just the click of keys and the occasional hum of the fridge behind me. Midweek, an email popped up from an address I didn't recognize. A project manager at a nonprofit in Portland had seen my portfolio through a referral from someone I'd worked with years ago. They were expanding and looking for someone who understood community systems, who could design and manage secure digital workflows. I interviewed over Zoom the next afternoon, wearing a navy blouse and Vera's pearls. 2 days later, they offered me the job. It wasn't flashy. No stock options. No open office perks. But it came with benefits, stability, and a relocation stipend. I accepted before the call even ended. The studio apartment was the size of a modest hotel room, with peeling paint and a radiator that wheezed in the morning. But the light hit just right around 7 a.m., casting soft gold across the kitchen floor. I signed the lease with my own hand. The landlord didn't ask if I had help. I didn't mention anyone. There was no housewarming, no posted update. I moved in alone and unpacked slowly. One suitcase, one laptop, one ceramic mug I didn't leave behind. If no one's watching when you rebuild your life, does it still count as starting over? 2 weeks passed without a word. I filled the quiet with routine morning tea by the window, remote meetings with my new team, spreadsheets open late into the evening. I ordered a small desk off Craigslist, assembled it myself, and positioned it in the corner of the apartment, where the light fell longest. I planted a pothos vine in an old soup can. It started to trail by the end of the week. The phone didn't ring. Not from Derek. Not from Sienna. Not even from Ava. Though I hadn't expected that part. It was cleaner this way. No residual thread left hanging. Then, on a Thursday, just as I finished uploading grant data into the organization's cloud system, my phone lit up. Derek, 2:18 p.m. Why can't we access the bank? I stared at the message for a long moment before the memory surfaced. Clear as breath on glass, when I was still living there, Derek had asked me to help streamline their financial setup. I'd created logins, enabled two-factor authentication, connected utilities to autopay, even flagged duplicate subscriptions they hadn't noticed. Sienna hated paperwork. Derek hated phone trees. So they handed it off to me grudgingly at first, then routinely, then without comment. I wasn't just a helper. I became the system, secondary admin on their checking and savings, recovery contact for their tax portal. The digital infrastructure of that household ran through me. But when I left, no one asked me to transfer it back. I typed a reply. Me, 2:24 p.m. Ask the leech. No emoji. No explanation. I put the phone face down on the desk. 5 missed calls followed in under an hour. Then a voicemail I didn't bother listening to. Then another message. Sienna. 3:11 p.m. This isn't funny. Marlene. Call Derek back. We can't pay the credit card. Are you really doing this after everything we've done for you? I read it twice, as if I might have misunderstood. Everything they had done for me. They'd offered a roof I helped pay to repair, meals I often bought, childcare I gave freely. But now, suddenly, I was the ungrateful one, the saboteur, the leech with the password key. I set the phone down and walked to the kitchen. The kettle had just started to boil, a thin line of steam trailing upward. I poured water over my tea bag and sat down without checking the screen again. I wasn't punishing them. I wasn't being cruel. I was just done. For the first time in years, I had leverage, not control. Not vengeance, just the power to say, no more. I didn't have to respond. I didn't have to fix it. The systems I built didn't come with a contract. They'd find a way to sort it out, or they wouldn't. Either way, it wouldn't be my mess anymore. That night, I went to bed with the phone in another room. The silence didn't bite like it used to. When silence is finally your choice, is it still loneliness? It was late afternoon when I heard the knock. Not frantic, not timid, just steady enough to let me know they weren't going anywhere. My building echoed like a cathedral when someone waited too long in the hallway. I stood up slowly, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw them. Derek in a blazer too formal for the weather, standing stiff and slightly behind Sienna. She held her purse against her chest, like it might shield her from the light coming through my window. I opened the door, but didn't step back. If you're here to yell, I said. Don't. They didn't. They walked in without a word, scanning the apartment like they couldn't quite believe this is where I lived now. The place was clean, small, bright. The scent of cinnamon tea lingered in the air. I let the silence settle. Sienna spoke first. We need your help. Her voice was softer than I remembered. Not weak, but smaller somehow. Derek cleared his throat and started explaining. Something about the bank locking them out. The tax software showing errors. Late fees on their mortgage. Eric had tried to fix it, but somehow flagged the account for suspicious activity. I already saw the alerts. I said, they looked at each other. I'll help. I told them, but I'm not coming back. No one argued. We sat around my small desk, Derek on the left, squinting at the screen, Sienna on the right. Arms folded, but still. I walked them through each step. Reset the bank login using the recovery code they never saved. Unfroze the tax file by calling the helpline. Navigating the menus they'd always handed off to me. Unlinked the third-party billing service Eric had accidentally connected to the wrong account. It took 2 hours. Sienna never raised her voice. Derek muttered every time a new security question popped up. But they listened. And when we were done, I opened a new document and typed out everything step by step. Plain language. I titled it, Instructions Follow Them. I sent it to their email. Then I opened every shared folder, unchecked every access box with my name, revoked every permission they hadn't even realized I had, one by one. I removed myself from their digital life. Sienna looked over at me, brow furrowed. So that's it. That's it. They stood. Neither offered a hug. I didn't expect one. At the door, Derek hesitated like he might say something, but whatever it was, got swallowed on the way up. They left. I closed the door, returned to my desk, and opened the shared folder labeled Cray Household Admin. I hovered over it for a moment. Then I clicked delete. Confirm. Gone. If you were never thanked for keeping everything afloat, do you owe anyone the lifeboat weeks past? The apartment settled around me like a well-worn coat, familiar in its quiet, comforting in its stillness. I filled my days with work, tea, and walks through a nearby park where no one knew my name. I didn't post updates. I didn't send messages. I let the silence grow roots. Then the messages started. First, a Facebook DM from my aunt. "Hey, sweetie, heard you moved out on your own. That's so great. Your mom said you've been distant lately. Just wanted to check in. Everything okay?" I stared at it for a long time before closing the app. Then a cousin forwarded a group text, a screenshot of a message from Sienna. "Marlene's changed since she got that job in Portland. She's become cold, distant. I don't even recognize her anymore. We asked for help, and she acted like we betrayed her." I didn't reply. A few days later, an email from Eric. 5 paragraphs, double-spaced, as if that made it easier to read. "Look, I know things have been tense, but Mom and Dad aren't perfect. None of us are. Maybe instead of blaming everyone, you could try being more understanding. You had a rough patch, we all do. Doesn't mean the world's out to get you. Let's talk soon. Coffee." I didn't answer. I just hit delete, then emptied the trash. They hadn't called when I left. They hadn't asked where I went or why I'd stayed away. But now that I was out of reach, now that the Wi-Fi worked and the bank portals were running and their inboxes were manageable, suddenly I was cold. Not gone, not grieving. Just cold. I brought it up to Vera one afternoon while we clipped back her gardenias in mismatched gloves. "Maybe I am being distant," I said quietly. Vera shook her head. "You didn't change," she said. "You just stopped covering for them." People confuse presence with service, but they're not the same. That night, I made a cup of tea and watched the city lights flicker below my window. I felt no rage, just relief. When people miss your silence, do they miss you or the things you were doing for them every Thursday morning? I sit in the basement room of the public library with a half circle of seniors and a whiteboard that barely erases. We talk about online banking, scam prevention, password strength. I show them how to recognize fake emails, how to reset their PINs, how to call customer service without getting lost in the hold music maze. Some come just to hear another voice. Some come because they're scared of clicking the wrong thing. Most of them remind me of myself a few years ago trying to keep up, trying not to be a burden. One woman, Jeanette, always brings a notepad with flowers drawn on the cover. She asks the most questions. After class last week, she lingered as I packed up. "You make me feel capable," she said, almost like a confession. I smiled and handed her a printout I'd made. That's the point. That night, I sat at my desk, the lamp low and warm, and opened a blank email. I typed slowly, no emotion, no preamble. Subject: final update. Body: hi Derek. Hi Sienna. Just wanted to confirm that I've removed myself from all financial systems, accounts, and tech platforms linked to the household. I will no longer be available for technical support going forward. I wish you both well. Marlene? I hit send. No reply came. I didn't expect one. Instead, I turned to my journal, a plain black notebook Vera gave me my first week in Portland. I hadn't used it until now. That night, I opened it and wrote the words I hadn't said aloud, not to them, not even to myself. I don't need an apology. I just hope you know, I was the one holding everything together. I closed the book and left it on the windowsill where the light reached in the morning. If you stop being the glue, and the house falls apart, were you ever the problem?